If you ever find yourself on the wild coast of Northern Jutland, listen closely. They say the wind itself tells stories there. It just roars in from the North Sea, whipping around the ancient walls of Borglum convent, and it whispers these incredible tales of a dark and stormy past.
And see, Borglum, it's a place that kind of exists in two different eras at the same time. To really get why its present is so full of kindness, we've got to take a journey back into the darkness of its past, a time of shipwreck, greed, and honestly, some terrible injustice.
So who's the main character of this old time? Well, meet Bishop Olaf Glob. As the Lord of Borglum, he was a man of immense power. But here's the thing, his influence was only matched by his absolutely insatiable, ruthless greed.
This guy literally turned disaster into profit. I mean, imagine this. Ships wreck on the coast, right? His warriors don't go out to rescue the sailors. No. They'd go out and finish the job the sea had already started. And all that stranded cargo, we're talking costly wine, valuable goods, it all went straight to the bishop. His cellars were overflowing while, blood was just washing away on the sand. It's pretty grim.
But his greed didn't stop at shipwrecks. Oh no. The bishop then set his sights on the huge inheritance of his own cousin's widow. Yeah, she was family. But to a guy like Olaf Glob, she was just another obstacle standing between him and a whole lot more wealth. So what happens when she stands her ground? She brings up her legal rights, the law's on her side. And the bishop? He's completely dismissive. His mindset was crystal clear. What's a woman got to do with rule? In his world, a woman had no place in power, especially when that power got in the way of what he wanted. So, the widow refuses to back down. But here's the thing. Defying a man like Bishop Glob, that meant you were inviting a storm far more dangerous than anything the North Sea could cook up. He was absolutely determined to break her, and he had what he thought was the ultimate weapon at his disposal.
Get this, the local courts actually sided with the widow. They upheld her claim. So what does the bishop do? He goes right over their heads. He sends riders all the way to Rome to appeal to the highest authority in the Christian world, the Pope himself. He was literally going to use the power of God as a weapon for his own greed.
And the response from Rome? A papal bull, an official decree from the Pope that carried the weight of a divine curse. The first blow was a spiritual attack. The bull said, "Cursed be she and all that belongs to her." Bam! Just like that, she's an enemy of the church. But it gets worse. Next, she was completely excommunicated. You have to understand, in that era, being expelled from the church was like being cast into absolute darkness. It was a spiritual death sentence. And then came the final blow. Total social isolation. The curse ordered everyone, friends, family, neighbors, to avoid her as if she were a plague. The bishop had done it. He'd successfully turned her entire world against her.
For the bishop, the philosophy was simple. What will not bend must break. He'd cursed her land, isolated her from her community, stripped her of her rights. He was absolutely certain she would finally break.
But she didn't break, not at all. Instead, the widow yoked her last 2 oxen to a wagon and just left. She fled Denmark entirely. She became a stranger in a foreign land. And it's there, on a lonely road in a place called Franconia, that fate intervened in the most unbelievable way.
So she's on this road, and she runs into a powerful knight. He asks her where she's from. And as she starts telling him about her home, about all her sorrows, they both realize the impossible. This knight was her own son, Jens Glob. He'd been abroad for years. Everyone thought he was dead. And when he heard what the bishop had done to his mother, well, in that very moment, justice became his sworn vow.
So Jens Glob rides back to Denmark, ready to challenge the bishop in court. But he runs smack into a frustrating truth. Because of that papal bull, the bishop was basically untouchable. He was above the law. And Jens realized, okay, if the law can't deliver justice, then he would have to deliver it himself.
And that's when Jens Glob makes this grim promise. He knew that legal channels were completely useless against a man shielded by the church. This wasn't a fight about the law anymore. Oh no, this had just become about personal vengeance.
So think about it. This was the ultimate challenge, right? How do you bring a man to justice when he holds the highest spiritual and legal protections in the entire country? Jens Glob knew he couldn't just walk up to him. He was going to need a perfect plan and a perfect moment.
Okay, so here's the plan. First, the target. Jens finds out the bishop is going to be reading Christmas Mass at this remote church. Perfect. Next, he needs an ally.
So he summons his fierce brother-in-law for backup. And then, the final piece of the puzzle, a terrible storm blows in, completely isolating the church and trapping the bishop inside. The house of God was about to become a hall of judgment.
Now Jens's brother-in-law, Olaf Hase, he barely makes it through the storm. He arrives late, and he sees Jens standing outside the church. His first thought, oh no, he's made peace, he's made a deal. So he draws his sword and just roars this terrifying vow, ready to kill both Jens and the bishop rather than accept some kind of truce.
But Jens calms him down, explaining the agreement he'd made. See, it wasn't a truce. Inside that quiet church, on that holy Christmas night, Jens Glob had already carried out his judgment. The bishop and all of his men were already dead, lying on the cold stone floor.
Of course, a story like this doesn't just end there. It becomes a legend. It becomes a ghost story, carried on that same moaning wind we talked about at the beginning. They say the ghost of the slain bishop still walks the halls of Borglum, and that the bloody events of that Christmas Eve still echo through time.
And that brings us right back where we started, full circle, to the two different times at Borglum. Think about that contrast. In the old time, if you were a victim of the sea, you were met with murder and theft. But in the new time, you're met with rescue, warm blankets, and genuine kindness, all happening at the very same convent.
And really, that powerful shift from a brutal past to a humane present, that's the heart of this entire story. It's a celebration of progress, right? A blessing for a new era that actually chooses compassion over cruelty.
But it does leave us with one last question to chew on. Even with all the sunbeams and kindness of the new time, that ancient wind, it still blows around Borglum, and it still tells the bishop's story, which really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As much as we try to build a better world, are the ghosts of the past ever truly gone?